In
right?
every wrongful conviction case,
Yeah.
there are 7 or 8 factors in play. And in every case, 3 or 4 or 5 of them all come together.
Yeah.
Whether you have police who are hiding evidence or fabricating evidence,
Yep.
whether you have prosecutorial misconduct, which is rampant, where you have bad defense lawyers, sleeping judges.
Sleeping judges.
When I read these transcripts, I am stunned at how I used to be in the courtroom.
Right.
We had good judges. How a judge can allow this type of testimony, the junk science from an expert who's not qualified.
Right.
The jailhouse.
Somebody who's paid to testify in a case in which he really does not have the information that allows him to make the claims he makes. Right.
It's not based on science. It's speculation. Okay. And
Right.
he's testified many times over years. So he's a very good testifier.
Right.
He has a nice vocabulary, he has a nice suit. He rolls into a small town where the jurors are not that sophisticated and they believe him. The lying jailhouse snitch, that happens every day.
Every place, right. Yeah.
Because jurors do not believe that a witness will take the stand under oath and tell a totally fabricated story. And when I heard the guy confess.
Even if you make the case, well, this guy's only doing it because he's going to get a reduced sentence or get a better deal or whatever else.
Well, they always deny that.
And there's a couple people in this case who are effectively testifying to something that didn't happen in exchange for X.
Yeah, a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, not to give too much away, but the crucial.
We just gave the whole thing away.
Sort of so-so. There's always that Grisham twist.
Yeah.
A crucial piece of evidence in this story is a flashlight that has specks of what is assumed to be blood.
Right. That was not found at the crime
At the scene. It was found in the trunk of the individual who was ultimately convicted of this crime. And what I really, back to the question of the sort of so-called experts, the guy who they put on the stand to testify, yes, this is blood and yes, this is connected to the crime, never actually even sees the flashlight.
Right.
He does this on the basis of pictures of the flashlight.
Enlarged photographs.
And you're not making up something that's out of the ordinary. This is what happens.
That all happened. That happened in Texas 35 years ago.
Well, and I want to come to that, right.
And it's in Bosque County.
It's in Clifton, Texas. This you acknowledge in the author's note at the end.
I stole all the facts.
You stole it. You're going to use the word stole.
That's what writers do, okay?
Steal. You stole it.
I confess.
I thought it was a loving homage.
I confess to stealing in the author's note.
The author's note acknowledges that the great Pamela Koloff, who was my colleague for many years at Texas Monthly, offices next to me at the Texas Tribune, now of ProPublica and the New York Times Magazine, wrote an extraordinary story about a man named Joe Bryan, who was a principal in Clifton, Texas, whose wife was murdered, and there was a flashlight. There was blood spatter. There was a question of whether he could have managed to hold the flashlight and a gun at the same time, as alleged. That is, in fact, a circumstance of the Quincy Miller case. I mean, it really is borrowing many key elements, and you acknowledge the debt to Pam Koloff in this.
It's a brilliant piece of writing by Pam. She has a 2-part series in the New York Times Magazine.
Right.
That's why I wrote the book.
That was it.
I saw the story and I said, this is too good to pass up. And so I researched that and got all the facts and just put them in the book.
Right.
But it shows.
It's not exactly the same, but it's quite simple.
It's very close.
Yeah.
It's very close. And by the way, I met Joe Bryan this morning for the first time in prison.
You did? Tell about that.
In Beaumont, Texas. I went to Beaumont at 10 o'clock this morning. I've been pen pal.
Had he heard of you?
He's read all 42 books.
He has. God. I got to get on
Joe reads
that.
everything.
He does.
Yeah.
Mass-facing, elite, snobby.
We became pen pals about a year ago after Pamela's piece.
So you wrote to him, yeah?
We've been writing back and forth for months, and I told him what I was going to do. I said, I'd like your permission to use your case, steal your case, take the facts, whatever. And then when the book comes out, I'm going to talk about your case. And so today I woke up in Dallas. We flew to Beaumont and flew here, and so I got to spend time with Joe Bryan.
Of course, the difference between Quincy Miller and Joe Bryan is Joe Bryan is still in. I mean, that's
for 35 years.
The interesting thing about it, and I don't mean interesting like good, I mean interesting is in this book, the good guy, the guy who did not commit the crime, gets out.
Right.
So far, in his case, not so much.
It's astonishing how he was convicted in Clifton, Texas, with virtually no evidence.
Right.
There's just no physical evidence.
Right.
The only thing that linked him to the crime, still links him to the crime, was the flashlight that was found days later in the trunk of his car.
Yeah.
And I asked him this morning, I said, was that your flashlight? He said, I don't know. How many flashlights do you have in your house?
Right.
40. I got 30. Well, it doesn't matter. You know where they are.
Right.
But you can't always identify them. They're pretty generic. He said, I don't think it was. We're not sure that the back spatter, the specks on the flashlight lens, are actually human blood.
Right.
So that's never been proven.
But
This expert
testified to
a guy from Texas who was testifying a lot back then.
Yeah.
He'd gone to a seminar spent 24 hours in a seminar,
And now he's an expert.
got a certificate saying you're an expert in blood stain analysis. He starts testifying about that.
Yep.
And these guys over the year, the more they testify, the smarter they get, and their resume gets thicker.
Yeah.
And so they
And their
roll.
fee goes up.
The fee goes, well, yeah, always. And they roll into some small town, and the thing about expert witnesses, the more distance they travel to get to your courthouse, the smarter they are.
Right.
And I've seen this in Mississippi. You know, you're in a courtroom, and there's an expert from California.
Really?
Oh God, he must really be smart. You know,
Yeah.
not from Arkansas, but from California.
Right.
And so the longer you travel, and so his resume got thicker and thicker. And he testified more and more over the years, and these guys become professional testifiers. They're really good.
Right.
And they want to convince a jury, and they'll fudge on the facts. They'll murder the science.
Right.
But they have big vocabularies, and oftentimes the judge is overwhelmed by the science. The science is complicated.
Yep.
And it's easy to convince jurors that.
Well, he sounds smart, right? He must be telling the truth.
Very smart.